You are looking at the bottom of Lake Tahoe. How about that? Nearly 1,500 feet below the surface. And those little particles you see floating around there are rich with nutrients.
For generations, Lake Tahoe has captivated the imagination of millions. Nestled between the Sierra Nevada and Carson Mountain ranges in the high alpine regions of the western United States, this massive freshwater body has inspired countless legends, myths, and theories about what lies in its darkest depths. For over a century, the scientific community and curious explorers have wondered what secrets rest at the bottom of this pristine natural wonder. The water's exceptional clarity and the lake's remarkable isolation created the perfect conditions for speculation. Local historians whispered tales of treasures lost beneath the surface, while conspiracy theorists spun elaborate narratives about ancient civilizations and hidden chambers. But everything changed when modern technology finally allowed us to see what was actually down there. The story of Lake Tahoe begins not with the lake itself, but with the geological forces that created it. Approximately 2 million years ago, the Earth's crust experienced a dramatic series of movements that would shape the landscape for generations to come. Two massive mountain ranges began their ascent simultaneously. To the west, the imposing Sierra Nevada rose steadily upward, while to the east, the Carson Range did the same. Between these two ascending geological titans lay a basin that gradually sank deeper and deeper into the earth. As the mountains climbed higher, the depression between them grew lower, creating a massive chasm in the landscape. Over countless millennia, water accumulated in this basin, filling it completely and creating one of the most remarkable lakes in North America. Today, Lake Tahoe spans an impressive 22 miles in length and 12 miles across at its widest point. It sits at an elevation of over 6,000 feet, surrounded by pristine forests and steep mountain slopes. The lake holds an almost incomprehensible volume of water, enough to supply drinking water to millions of people or cover an entire state to a significant depth. But what makes Tahoe truly unique is not its size or its altitude, but rather what happens to everything that sinks to its bottom. The deepest point of the lake descends to depths that only a handful of locations on the continent can match. At this furthest point beneath the surface, the water temperature remains nearly constant year-round at approximately 39 degrees Fahrenheit. This particular temperature is significant because it represents the point at which fresh water reaches its maximum density. The implications of this scientific fact are profound. The cold, high-pressure environment at Lake Tahoe's depths creates extraordinary conditions for preservation. Unlike warmer lakes and rivers, where decomposition occurs rapidly through bacterial action and natural decay processes, Lake Tahoe's frigid waters dramatically slow these processes. The bacteria responsible for breaking down organic matter simply cannot function efficiently at such cold temperatures. The intense pressure of the water column above further inhibits decomposition. Objects that would deteriorate within weeks in a conventional lake environment can remain essentially unchanged for decades in Tahoe. This discovery fundamentally altered how scientists understood the lake and explained many of the persistent legends surrounding it. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for this preservation phenomenon emerged in the early years of the 21st century. A recreational diver had vanished in the lake during the summer of 1994. His name was Donald Windecker, a city planner who disappeared while diving off the western shoreline. Search teams conducted extensive operations, but the extreme depth and dangerous conditions prevented them from locating him. For 17 years, his body remained undiscovered in the cold, dark depths. Then, in 2011, another team of experienced divers exploring the deeper zones stumbled upon his remains. What they found astonished them. Despite nearly 2 decades submerged in the water, Windecker's body remained remarkably preserved. His physical features were still recognizable, his clothing intact, and the evidence suggested minimal decay. This discovery provided concrete scientific validation for what researchers had theorized about Tahoe's preservation capabilities. The lake has preserved other significant artifacts throughout history. The most famous example is the SS Tahoe, a vessel that once served as the primary mode of transportation for passengers and cargo across the lake's vast surface. Constructed in the 1890s, This steamship plied the waters for more than 4 decades before being retired. In 1940, the ship's owner made an unusual decision. Rather than scrapping the vessel, he chose to intentionally sink it in the lake, hoping that glass-bottomed tour boats could view it from the surface. The plan went awry when the ship descended far deeper than intended, sliding down the steep underwater slope until it settled at depths exceeding 300 feet. For over 6 decades, the SS Tahoe rested undisturbed in its cold, dark grave. When modern technical divers finally located and documented the wreck in the early 2000s, they were astonished by what they found. The ship's brass fittings still gleamed despite the passage of decades. Wooden components showed virtually no rot. The painted letters on the hull remained legible and vibrant. The vessel appeared to have been scuttled mere months earlier rather than 80 years prior. The lake had functioned as a perfect time capsule, preserving the ship in extraordinary condition. Beyond the human artifacts, Lake Tahoe holds geological secrets of profound significance. During periods of severe drought in earlier centuries, the water level of the lake dropped dramatically, exposing previously submerged areas along the shoreline. In the 1930s, researchers discovered something remarkable along the banks of the lake: perfectly preserved tree stumps still rooted in their original positions on the lake bed. These were not recent trees. Carbon dating revealed that some of these stumps were thousands of years old, stretching back to periods when the lake was considerably smaller. The trees had grown during ancient dry periods and subsequently drowned in place when climate patterns shifted and precipitation returned. Later discoveries in neighboring water bodies revealed something even more remarkable: entire underwater forests of pine trees still standing upright on the lake floor, their roots still in the sediment where they had grown centuries or even millennia ago. Some of these trees dated back more than 2,000 years. These submerged forests provided powerful evidence of dramatic climate shifts in Earth's ancient past and suggested that severe megadroughts lasting hundreds of years were not anomalies, but regular occurrences in the region's deep history. The human history associated with Lake Tahoe proved equally complex and often troubling. During the late 1800s, the region surrounding the lake became a hub of industrial activity. Lumber operations flourished as timber was harvested to support mining operations in Nevada. A significant portion of the labor force that made this industrial boom possible consisted of Chinese workers who came to the region seeking opportunity. These workers established communities around the lake, built infrastructure, operated the flumes that transported timber down the mountainsides, and managed the cordwood operations that supplied fuel to the broader economy. However, this period of opportunity proved tragically short-lived. Organized campaigns of violence and economic discrimination systematically drove the Chinese population out of the region by the 1880s. What had been thriving communities disappeared almost entirely within a span of years, their contributions to the region largely erased from historical records and popular memory. The scientific investigation of Lake Tahoe took a dramatic turn when researchers began to understand the geological hazards posed by the region's active fault lines. A major fault runs directly beneath the deepest portions of the lake, and geological evidence suggested that major earthquakes occurred roughly every 3,000 years or so. The most recent significant rupture took place approximately 4,500 years ago, suggesting that another major seismic event was statistically overdue. If such an earthquake occurred while Lake Tahoe's massive water body sat directly above it, the results would be catastrophic. A sudden displacement of the fault line could generate a tsunami in the freshwater lake, something virtually no one in the surrounding communities was prepared to handle. Computer models suggested that such a tsunami could reach heights of 30 feet or more and would arrive at populated shorelines within minutes. Additionally, the phenomenon of seiche would cause the water to slosh back and forth for hours after the initial wave, repeatedly hammering the shoreline with waves of varying heights. Communities surrounding the lake, which now host tens of thousands of residents in hotels, casinos, residential areas, and ski resorts, had no evacuation infrastructure for such an event. For more than a century, the bottom of Lake Tahoe remained completely inaccessible to human observers. Recreational divers could descend only a few hundred feet before reaching the limits of safe diving with conventional equipment. The deepest sections of the lake, especially the profound abyss near Crystal Bay, lay beyond the reach of any technology available to the 20th century. This inaccessibility fueled speculation and mythology. People imagined what might rest on that distant bottom. Stories circulated about organized crime families disposing of bodies, about secret military installations, about ancient artifacts and undiscovered civilizations. The mystery persisted because no one could verify or refute these claims. The actual bottom remained unseen, shrouded in darkness and distance. That changed dramatically in September of 2025. A nonprofit organization dedicated to exploring and understanding Lake Tahoe partnered with an engineering firm specializing in underwater technology to deploy a remotely operated vehicle specifically designed to reach the lake's greatest depths. The vehicle, affectionately nicknamed Emmy, was equipped with high-definition cameras, advanced lighting systems, and the ability to transmit live footage back to the surface. For the first time in human history, thousands of people watched in real time as a camera descended into the deepest reaches of Lake Tahoe. The journey to the bottom took approximately 35 minutes of continuous descent through the cold, dark waters. What Emmy found proved simultaneously underwhelming and revelatory. The anticipated mysteries vanished almost immediately. There were no bodies stacked on the lake floor, no evidence of organized crime activities, no secret military installations, no ancient ruins or geometric structures, no glowing portals to hidden dimensions. What the footage revealed instead was a landscape that appeared almost entirely barren. The camera showed silt and sediment covering the lake floor, with particles suspended in the water that resembled underwater snow drifting through the illumination of Emmy's powerful lights. This barrenness itself became the revelation. Scientists explained that the sediment visible in the footage consisted largely of inorganic particles eroded from the surrounding mountains over vast spans of geological time. These particles settled through the water column gradually, which partially explained why Lake Tahoe maintained its legendary clarity. The bottom of the lake was not hiding ancient civilizations or mysterious artifacts. Instead, it was quietly performing the slow, methodical work of filtering the water above it, maintaining the very clarity that made the lake so visually striking to human observers. However, the footage also revealed something less romantic, but more troubling. Scattered across the lake floor were discarded tires, lost fishing equipment, and other manufactured debris that should never have been there. These items provided sobering evidence that Lake Tahoe, despite its remote location and protected status, had been significantly impacted by human activity. Previous expeditions had recovered dozens of tires from various depths, suggesting that the lake was accumulating human waste at a concerning rate. The pristine, untouched lake of popular imagination proved to be anything but pristine. What the drone expedition ultimately demonstrated was that Lake Tahoe's true mysteries were not on the bottom of the lake, but rather on its surface and shores. Real people had disappeared in the region over the decades, and many of these cases remained unsolved. A casino nurse vanished in 1970, and her remains were not identified until more than 5 decades later, when DNA technology finally caught up with the mystery. The lake drowns an average of 7 people annually, many of whom are never recovered. These cold water drownings occur because swimmers and boaters underestimate the shock of immersion in water maintained at temperatures near freezing. What modern science was gradually revealing was that the Washoe people, who had inhabited the Lake Tahoe region for at least 6,000 years, had understood these dangers through generations of accumulated observation. Their spiritual traditions, which described powerful beings in the deep water that could pull swimmers under, were actually codified descriptions of cold water shock and the lake's unpredictable current patterns. The Washoe warnings about specific dangerous locations corresponded precisely to areas where underwater geology created treacherous conditions. Modern researchers were discovering that indigenous knowledge, transmitted through oral tradition and spiritual narrative, contained sophisticated practical understanding of the lake's actual hazards. The wave that the Washoe feared from these water spirits was the very real phenomenon of sudden death from cold water immersion that continues to claim lives today. Lake Tahoe, it turned out, was exactly as dangerous as the ancient peoples who knew it best. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.